Now it is time to turn our attention to our Hall of Fame inductees. Please look at the screen so that we can learn more about our first inductee of the evening, Pete Konenkamp.
Pete Konenkamp's journey into journalism was pedal-powered as a newspaper delivery boy in Macon. He segued into helping launch a college radio station, later becoming news director of Georgia Radio News in 1986, and finally a 20-year broadcast career with the University of Georgia.
It's been more than 50 years since I met Pete Konenkamp. We were both students at the Ed Starr School of Radio and Television Announcing in Macon. After that, we both began working at WBML, where he was the evening newscaster and I was the evening disc jockey, on a mission to crack him up when he was reading the news live.
WBML News now presents Peter Konenkamp.
Good evening. Campaign headquarters for Democratic presidential contender Morris Udall have been opened.
He had the fortune of covering Capricorn Records and the Southern rock movement, and later a U.S. president who would occasionally go home to Plains, Georgia. Pete always covered both the positives and negatives of Jimmy Carter and Capricorn fairly and accurately. And it was a whole lot easier to work with Pete than to have to compete against him.
FM 99, WMAZ FM, Macon.
FM 99 News at 8 o'clock. Good morning, I'm Pete Konenkamp.
I hired Pete Konenkamp in the early 1980s, and he was a perfect find because he didn't need any training at all. We had a situation where you had somebody working at WNEX radio and WBML radio. Then he comes to WMAZ radio. He knows everybody in town, the movers and the shakers and the police and the fire. No training at all. We just threw him out there. Part of Pete's job was feeding the network in Atlanta. It was Georgia News Network and WGST, and he would feed them stories in the middle Georgia area, and they would be sent around the state for broadcast. Well, he must have done a good job with that because they stole him away and hired him.
Pete, this is, of course, your last morning with FM 99. Unbeknownst to, I'm sure, most of our listeners, you are going on to bigger and better things.
With warm feelings that I leave you folks, and of course I will become FM 99's Atlanta correspondent, so you'll still be hearing from me, just not on this particular program.
I first came across his name in the mid-'70s on the UPI wire. UPI would send a list called Kudos, reporters who had fed stories to the wire that week. These stations had full-time local news people, and Pete's name was always on the list too. Not only did Pete know the state, but he epitomized two things about being a news professional. He was always accurate, and he was always even-tempered. I've never seen him lose his cool.
Georgia Network News. Good evening. I'm Pete Konenkamp.
I began working with Pete in 1983 after he joined the Georgia Radio News Service, back when we both had hair. I worked with him closely in that capacity there for 9 years. When I moved to the Director of Broadcast position and the broadcast editor's job became available, I knew Pete would make an excellent addition because of his extensive broadcasting background and his professional reputation. Pete joined our division in 1994. Pete shared in a Southeastern Regional Emmy Award for a documentary our team produced on the Gulf of Mexico BP oil blowout disaster in 2011. Pete worked with virtually every major national news organization, along with many international organizations from Australia to Zimbabwe. In addition, Pete worked with hundreds of broadcast news students from the College of Journalism and Mass Communication as they worked on stories for their classes.
I think one thing probably people might be surprised about that was when I met him, Pete was actually a hard worker. I mean, he was out there, just kidding, Pete, just kidding. But that was one of the things that impressed me, though, because the way he went about his business, because I was still learning how to do the reporting and all that went with the on-air. And Pete was one of the ones I learned from because I was always very impressed with the way he went about telling a story and gathering the information for the story. Sometimes there are unsung heroes who do great things for a long period of time and don't necessarily achieve the recognition. And I'm happy to say that you are one of those unsung heroes. You were a role model to me and thrilled that you're being recognized, my friend. Congratulations on a great body of work and a job well done.
Pete truly is a bulldog point of pride.
So here's to Pete. Way to go, man.
Congratulations, my friend.
Congratulations, Pete. You deserve it. We're proud of you.
God gives many of us brothers and sisters, but only a few of us does he give a lifelong best friend. My best friend is Pete Konenkamp. Congratulations on your induction to the GAB Hall of Fame.
To share a little more about Pete's life and career, please welcome Dr. Maria Boynton.
Good evening, everyone. Well, it is dark up here. So basically, I'll just talk off cuff and I'll be here for an hour. So everyone, I just want to say thank you so much, GAB, for having me here. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chairman Hart. Thank you to my fellow inductees and to the Georgia Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. And, of course, to the board. For Pete Konenkamp, I'd just like to say, wow. I mean, how did you get all that old stuff? I don't know. I'd have to dig through a lot of reels and everything to find mine. But you're really good, Pete. And this evening, I have to tell you, I am so elated to be here. And Pete asked me to speak, and he was a little emotional on the phone. And after he was done with me, I had to call my mama. I said, I'm going to call my mom. Because for Pete to ask me to speak is just beyond belief. My family, they call him Konenkamp. They call him, so they just call him Pete, really. Because they know I would talk about Pete every time I talk to them. So they started asking me, how's Pete doing? So to tell you the story, excuse me, Pascual Perez. So some of you are already aware of the story.
Yes.
He was nicknamed Mr. I-285. And, I tried to get Pete in and to be inducted. He didn't make it the first time. But I told him, he didn't get in this time, but I'll be darn sure I'm going to come back and tell you another story next time. And I did, yeah, I did. Pascual Perez, again, nicknamed Mr. I-285. I'd met Pete at a GAB event at the University of Georgia. And I will say this, Pete ended up offering me a job with the Georgia News Network. And again, I remind you of Pascual Perez, Mr. I-285. They can now call me Miss I-285. Because I got on 285, I had never driven in Atlanta in all my days, and Pete was waiting on me to sign the paperwork, bring me on. I got on 285, and I could not get off. I was talking to Pete. I don't know, because we didn't have cell phones back then. Did we, Pete? Well, I'm still young. But, so I was stopping at a payphone, But Pete waited on me. He waited for me. And that let me know the manner of a man that Pete Konenkamp is to this day. A good friend, a kind man. I came to work at the Georgia News Network in WGST. And Pete was not only a leader, a mentor, a teacher, he was also my friend. And there were so many stories to tell about his mom that he told me. He'd put me in his car, and we'd take off going somewhere. I don't know. Did we ever end up in Ludowici? I don't know. But we covered the entire state, and Pete would take me in his car. Those were the good days because I knew that he cared about not only the stuff that we were doing for our listeners and the clients, but he cared about me. He cared about how I did my job and about how I was perceived by the community too. And I thank you for that, Pete. And my final story, I guess, well, first and foremost, I am just another wow because Pete's entire darn family is here near about. Can y'all stand, please? There are 8 of them, and I will tell you this, y'all are wonderful. And I remember when he married his bride, Darlene. Stand up, Darlene. And I remember, honey, she still is beautiful. And I mean, oh my God, we said, Pete got that? Pete pulled that? It was awesome, and she is still a beautiful woman to this day. And another story, Pete and I have plenty of stories. I'm going to sit down. I was on the air in New York City doing the news, and I come back into the newsroom, and they say, you have a phone call. And I'm like, who is it? And so I pick up the phone, and he says, I'm sorry if there are any ministers in the house. He says, damn, you sound good. And I said, Pete. And it was Pete. And, you know, they were on layover at one of the airports in New York City. And I said, where are you going? And he said, I'm going to Russia to get my son. And I said, oh, my God, Pete, what are you going to name him? He said, Pete. And Peter is here this evening with his beautiful bride and their baby. And I have to tell you, it just makes me feel all warm inside, on the outside too, because my friend, my mentor, my teacher, my leader, Pete Konenkamp, is being inducted this evening into the Georgia Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. I couldn't be prouder. Come on up, Pete.
I'm a radio guy. I've got a script. Don't memorize anything, so bear with me. I want to thank Maria for that incredibly kind introduction. And a heartfelt thanks to my late friend Jim Holsenbach for preserving the audio that you heard on this video. And to Daryl Smith at WMAZ in Macon for the wonderful video tribute. Daryl, I want you to know that you and your team at Channel 13 have always felt like family to me. Being inducted into the Georgia Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame tonight is an honor beyond anything that I could have imagined. To be inducted alongside my former boss, Bob Houghton, makes it extra special. It is profoundly humbling to stand here among so many of you who have shaped not just my career, but my life. I have to admit, I'm a little surprised to be receiving this recognition. After all, I'm the same guy who once told my listeners there'd be more nudes in 30 seconds. Then there was the time I burst into laughter during a live report, no less, about two women from Michigan who'd been kidnapped and brought to Macon. A terrible story, but their names, Schmick and Schmuck. And I do, tonight, give my belated apologies to Schmick and Schmuck. And of course, I can't forget telling a nationwide audience that Jimmy Carter nearly dropped his granddaughter on the steps of Air Force One, when it was actually his grandson, Jason. Yet, despite these missteps, some humorous, some horrifying, here I am. I almost ran over MASH actor McLean Stevenson as I was returning from lunch at WGST's studios. But I'm reminded of what legendary baseball announcer Ernie Harwell said when he was inducted into this very Hall of Fame in 1992. He said, "I'm a turtle on a fence post. If you see a turtle on a fence post, you know he didn't get there by himself." That sentiment rings especially true for me. Broadcasting has been in my blood for generations. My great-grandfather was a travel writer for the Brooklyn Daily Eagle. Perhaps my fascination with storytelling began with the fact that the man readers called the king of trolley travelers gave me the curiosity about the world, about people, about events that shape our lives. It started early, and when I found radio, I knew I had found my place. 50 years ago, this year, Randy Smith, the founding manager of WXGC-FM in Milledgeville, now WGUR, gave me and 16 other Georgia College students a chance to start a radio station. And that was it. I was hooked. I'll never forget that feeling, the thrill of being on the air, the responsibility of getting it right, the excitement of knowing people who were listening. And I might never have had that chance if it weren't for Jess Branson at WBML in Macon. He hired me despite the fact that I walked in with an audition tape that had been partially erased. Instead of showing me the door, he handed me a script. That simple act changed my life. At WNEX, Dennis Hayes took me under his wing. Together, we covered everything from Jimmy Carter to the Allman Brothers Band. There were plenty of lessons along the way. Some came the hard way, like the time I had a run-in with the Secret Service for getting too close to then President-elect Carter. Let's just say a punch in the gut was a quick lesson in personal space. Then there was the day I had to slip out of a federal courtroom after 3 angry farmers threatened to kill me for recording them in a confrontation with U.S. Marshals, a confrontation that was played on the witness stand. And I even found myself in unexpected chaos. I broke up a fight between my boss and Greg Allman at the Capricorn barbecue. Somehow, I managed to record the entire thing and separate them. Now that's what I call multitasking. But not all the moments were humorous. There was a far more disturbing moment at a Klan rally where they attempted to overturn a station news car with me in it. Now that moment stays with you. I owe so much to the people who believed in me. Paul Beliveau entrusted me with the morning anchor spot at WMAZ AM and FM 99, a huge responsibility. Richard Warner brought me to the Georgia Radio News Service, where I had the privilege of covering historic moments like Pope John Paul II's visit to South Carolina and working with great people like Maria Boynton. At WGST and GNN, I worked under the late John Lauer, a GAB Hall of Famer whose leadership taught me the lessons that I carry with me to this day. And I can't forget Steve Bell, the best boss I ever had. He gave me the freedom and support to do my best work during my 22 years at UGA. Together, we navigated crises from devastating fires to a triple murder, always leaning on the strength of our team. I'm also grateful for the GAB's Bill and Marlene Sanders. Their encouragement meant the world to me. To my Big X WNEX interns, Annie Laurie, Brennan Wynn, and Marcia Shipley Ludgood, seeing your success and Maria's success reminds me why mentorship matters. To my lifelong friends, Charlie Pritchett and Bill Elder, you were there through every twist and turn. Charlie, I remember us learning to say news director at the Ed Star School of Broadcasting. Somehow I said it well enough to land in the Hall of Fame. Bill and I were destined to be friends. We were born just 2 years and 1 day apart, and we grew up 5 miles from each other in New York. We worked side by side in Macon for 7 years. And I wish he, above all people, could be with us tonight. Please keep him in your prayers as he battles dementia. Finally, to my late parents, Jack and Margaret, my 7 siblings, my children, my grandchildren, and especially my wife of 37 years, Darlene, you are my heart, my rock, and my greatest blessing. Every step of this journey has been possible because of your love and support. So why journalism? Besides the long hours and the low pay, what's in it? The satisfaction of knowing that you were there when history was made. The knowledge that at least once in your life, your story made someone's life better. Or maybe, just maybe, you made someone smile because you brought them good news. Being a journalist, of course, is a responsibility, one that I have never taken lightly. Now more than ever, news matters, facts matter, the truth matters. I know the headwinds that we face are challenging, but seeing firsthand the talent and dedication in this room tonight, I'm confident the future of broadcasting is in capable hands. In 2006 at UGA, Jimmy Carter approached me and WSB's Pete Combs with a grin on his face and said, "Hey, are y'all sick of me yet?" Pete and I chuckled, and as Carter walked off, we knew that we had shared a weird moment in history. I hope that none of you are sick of me just yet. My deepest thanks to the GAB for this incredible honor. This turtle, humbled and grateful, is proud to be on the fence tonight. Thank you so much.